Hi, I'm Paul Germain, and welcome to another session of Smart Boating. As you know, if you watched the show before, we cover a variety of topics, from man overboard to insurance. And the whole idea is to give you some information that will help you make smarter decisions and have more fun on the water. Today's show is right up that alley, and it's a very timely show. It's going to focus on chartering. And joining me today to help us understand that topic is a local charter captain, Claude Boudet. Claude, welcome.
Well, thank you, Paul. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Hey, before we get into the show, which is going to be really interesting, can you share a little bit about your boating experience, then we'll get into your chartering experience?
Yes, I've been a boat owner for 40 years in Manchester. I'm also the assistant harbor master there as well. But I've been teaching lessons and boating for 40 years and just love the opportunity to be on the water.
You've been around boating a long time. Well, we have a couple of shots. You've been running a charter operation for a number of years, and here's a photo of the boat, one of the boats you've used. Can you tell us a little bit about what's going on in that operation?
Yeah, this is the current boat that we are chartering, Frayed Knot, which is a Beneteau Oceanus 50. It's got 3 staterooms. We can accommodate up to 10 for a day sail. So it's plenty spacious.
Yeah. It looks really nice under sail. I guess it's a good performer.
Yes, this is actually a Beneteau 46, which is doing very well under sail, which we have chartered as well. She likes the wind.
Yeah, yeah. And here's back to the current boat at anchor, at the mooring, really, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Once again, it's easy access to get on board from the stern, and the cockpit is plenty spacious with the bimini to keep them a little bit out of the sun if need be.
So you primarily do half-day and full-day charters on this boat?
Yes, and we do overnighters as well.
Overnighters, okay.
Yeah.
Well, you've got just the sort of experience we need for this particular show, so why don't we get right into it?
Great.
Okay. Well, you know, it's a big topic, and we can't cover everything, but I think we can cover some important points. And one of the important points I think that might be on people's minds is why should I charter? I've got a photo up here right now of Baker's Island, which is right off the coast. And that sort of experience is one of the reasons that people charter, right?
Yes, especially in the Northeast, very short season. Some people just haven't explored the coastline as much as they probably should have. And it's a great opportunity to get on board without spending a lot of travel money.
Right, and here's another shot. This is relatively local to us. This is the Boston skyline. That's another place they can explore, right?
Yeah, it tends to be a very attractive spot for people to go explore a city and from the water.
Yes.
And it's only like a 3-hour sail from Manchester, so it's really can be done in a day. Or if they want a short overnighter, that's very possible too.
Very convenient. Now, if you want to broaden up your circle a little bit and go regional, here's a photo of Bar Harbor. That's a popular chartering destination as well, right?
Yeah, anytime people want to charter, they usually think of down east.
Right.
So, yeah, if they want to spend a couple extra nights, Maine coast is just fabulous to be chartering. Yes,
Yeah.
Many options up there to look at.
Very fun. And then another option would be, this is a nice photo of St. Croix down the Virgin Islands. That's another option to choose from when you're thinking about chartering.
Yes, this would be more of your winter getaway, and primarily it would be catered towards probably chartering for a little lengthier period of time, like a week
or two or whatever it might be. Yeah, okay. All right, so people, if they're watching the show and they say, okay, well, that sounds like a good idea. I think I might want to charter. There's a couple different warm places that people think of where they can go, and we've got some photos of Florida here. What do you see as the kind of the pros and cons of chartering in Florida?
Well, Florida is not that far to travel in terms of additional money to get there.
Yes.
They could drive it if they need to, but once again, you're within the country. The weather is usually very good for most of the year.
Yep.
Money is not an issue in terms of money exchange. The language is not a barrier either. So.
Right. I like Florida as well because, as you can see in this photo, you can have a variety of experiences from a getaway, isolated, to maybe interacting with some of the cities in Florida too, right? So it's kind of
it depends
nice
on what your itinerary is and
Yes.
where you want to explore, whether you want to keep it a little bit more isolated or stay close to the city. And provisioning would be an ideal thing closer to the cities.
It would. It would. Now, so if we start at Florida, then you move the next step. Oftentimes, from people's minds, the Caribbean. This is a picture of St. Thomas, just beautiful place. As we look at 2 or 3 pictures here of St. Thomas and Virgin Gorda and so on, the issue of timing is important, right? Whether it's high shoulder or low season. What sort of impact do you get, whether the charter's in the Virgin Islands or wherever else it is?
Well, the Virgin Islands, it tends to be a lot of eye candy.
Yes.
People like to go down there because of the weather.
Oh my God, yes.
Fewer tides, so
Yep.
it's a lot easier to navigate.
Right.
St. Thomas is a really good port for provisioning.
Yes.
But once you get to islands, the cost will be a little bit higher
Right.
because they have to import everything.
Right. And if I go during high season, which is December to January, that's going to be typically my highest cost, right? And then I got my shoulder, which is what, February through March or something?
Yeah, well, the high season down there will correspond with our winter season up here for obvious reasons.
Yes, yes.
And then the summer season will be the low season, so the cost will be a little bit less because people will want to stay north.
Right.
The shoulder season will be the in-between seasons, and that will be at a little bit reduced rate, but there are other hazards like hurricane season.
Yes, all right. So this is our shot of Virgin Gorda, just a beautiful place. And Anguilla, I think is what they call this particular island in the Caribbean. It's just, again, a gorgeous, gorgeous place to go. The next step out in my mind is the Med. And this is a photo of Croatia. And we follow this by a photo of Sicily. What, in your perspective, what are the pros and cons of these of cruising the Med?
Well, the Mediterranean is typically very good cruising year-round.
It is, okay.
But once again, the big factor is getting there. So that's going to be
Right.
a pretty
Get
substantial...
the travel, expense, hassle, yeah. Mhm.
And then you're talking about exchanging money. That would be another factor. And
Right.
another factor would be the language.
The language,
So
right.
if you can overcome all of those and feel comfortable with it,
Right.
that would be a great destination as well.
So it's a little more exotic, but there's
Yes.
some issues here. This is the final picture we have in the area. Spain, again, it's just a beautiful place to go. And as I think about, again, I almost think about it in terms of rings of convenience and exoticism kind of against each other and contrast to each other. The next ring I think about is the South Pacific. Tahiti, Tonga. We've got a couple photos of those locations here. What's your perspective on what the pros and cons are?
Once
there?
again, those destinations are usually 12-month destinations, so that
They are.
there really isn't a real high and low season
Yeah.
per se,
Yeah.
even though there will be fewer travelers just because of our off seasons in certain times.
Yes.
But once again, it's very exotic, many islands to discover and explore.
Yes.
But once again, the costs are very, very high because everything has to be imported.
Yes, yes.
Provisioning is rather expensive.
So that's somewhat of an exceptional vacation there.
That would
To
be
go out
on
to
the high
South
end.
Pacific,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Right. All right. So
Definitely on the bucket list.
yes. So let's say you say, oh, okay, maybe the Caribbean sounds good to me, or the Med, something a little more modest. The next decision it seems like you might want to make is about the boat, and there's some different varieties, right? There's monohulls and cats, really in sail and power, right? So we've got some photos here of monohull, and as you can see here, this is the boat that when people think of a sailboat here in the Northeast, this is what they typically have and or think about, right?
That is correct. The Northeast is very popular with monohulls. Not too many catamarans. Will be primarily in chartering country in terms of
Yes.
stability.
Yes.
It's not quite as tippy. They're a little bit wider in
Right.
terms of accommodations.
So these are nice performing boats. People are used to them and familiar with them. They know how to sail them. They've spent time on them. So
Yes.
that's I would think that would be a big pro for a monohull and someone chartering a
It
boat.
definitely would, because familiarity is a key. You know,
Yes.
when you're sailing.
Yes.
Monohulls tend to sail much better into the wind than a cat would. They tend to be a little bit faster, generally speaking, not always.
Okay, all right. And here's a picture of a cockpit. Now, a lot of the boats that people would charter are, I don't know, 35 plus, maybe 40 feet. and this one's about 42 feet. So when you get to that size, you can carry quite a number of people. We can see them in the cockpit here,
Right.
and it's very comfortable. It's got
Yeah.
plenty of room, right?
Yeah, with a monohull, you tend to have fewer berths because they're a little bit narrower.
Okay.
With a catamaran, you'll generally have 4 berths for, 4 couples.
Right, in the 2 different hulls. We're going to look at the Cat in a second
Yeah.
here, but again, this is a lot of room. Here's the typical galley setup. Again, because of the size of the boat, the models are more narrow, as you say, but they still are beamy enough, so you're getting a good-sized salon, you're getting a good-sized galley, and that sort of thing, right?
Yes, and the monohulls tend to be more for families that know
Okay.
everybody, so that it's a little bit more intimate.
Right, because you got a common corridor there.
Yes, yes. And not everybody will have their own head, whereas in a catamaran, they will tend to have
Okay.
en suites.
That's a big difference there.
Yeah.
And here's a stern shot of a monohull again. A lot of pros for this. In terms of the cons, I would guess, and we're going to talk more about it with the Cat, just perhaps a little less space in general.
Right, they'll tend to be a little bit narrower, but once again, there's ample room on both models.
Right.
It just depends on what your preference is and what you feel most comfortable with.
Well, let's take a look at a Cat, because you don't see these Cats around here. We got a few more photos of these, because people aren't familiar with them, but you can tell just from the shot, there's a lot of square footage on this boat,
Yes.
which is nice to have when you're on a boat for a week or 2 at a time, right?
Yes, with the catamaran, they'll have the 2 pontoons, which will be the extreme outer perimeter.
The hulls, yeah.
And with that, you'll get much more beam, which is width of the boat,
Right.
and common area in the middle between the 2 pontoons.
Yeah, I think we've got some photos of that. Here's a nice example of what you're talking about here, right?
That is a lot of space for your main salon or your dining area
Yep.
to congregate and as a group to enjoy each other's company.
Yes, yes. So that's a big advantage there. Here's another picture of a galley in a Cat. And again, because of that beam, you've got basically you have more space. So
Yeah,
they
so-
take full advantage of it on these boats.
Absolutely. So there's much more room for whoever's working in the galley to spread their wings and not feel like they're in a little coffin. Yeah.
Right. Here's a picture of a cabin, and you were mentioning oftentimes there's 4 cabins on a Cat.
Yes.
I guess the length of the cabin, in other words, your height, is about the same, but the berths tend to be wider.
Well, with a catamaran, yeah, they'll all tend to be pretty uniform in size. They're not going to be huge, but you're not going to spend a whole lot of time in your cabin.
True.
A lot of these boats are equipped with air conditioning and heat.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they're very, very spacious and
Very comfortable.
Very comfortable.
Here's a nice feature that's you find more on the Cat than you do on the Mono, which is the attached head to each cabin, right?
Yeah, with a full stand-up shower, which is a real plus for most travelers.
It's a nice luxury to have, especially when
is.
you're out in the salt and the sand all day long and you want to get a fresh start at night.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a nice feature of a Cat. And here's another picture that just shows how expansive it is there because of the design of the boat, right?
Yeah, the working area is so much more comfortable for whoever's working in the galley, and spacious enough so they can see out and still feel like they're part of the group.
Yep. Now, and then that expansiveness carries on to the rear deck, right? Where everyone can be out here again for cocktails or a beach party, whatever
Yeah,
they
you
like
can
to do.
enjoy the weather. There's usually a bimini overhead to protect you if it's raining, but it keeps you out of the sun.
Yeah.
Once again, good place to congregate or get a little R&R, read a book.
Plenty of room.
Plenty of room.
Plenty of room. Now here's another option. So, and I think of this when I think of someone, well, chartering in Florida or maybe the Caribbean. Mono hull, single hull, sport fish. This one's about 47, 48 feet. And you can tell from the photo, this is a sizable boat. And when you get into the size boat, you get accommodations like this. This is the main salon, and it's very spacious.
Yeah, well, a boat this size, especially the monohull, it will tend to be big, and especially the stateroom will be exceptionally large.
Yes.
But there'll be fewer staterooms on board.
Fewer staterooms,
So
okay.
it's geared towards a smaller group, more intimate family.
Yep.
as opposed to multiple families.
Okay, that's a good point. And you just mentioned the stateroom. We've got a photograph right here. And again, in a boat this size, 47, 48 foot, you don't compromise much when it comes to the main stateroom, right?
No, that's as spacious and luxurious as you would find at home.
Right.
It's very big.
Yeah, it's a really nice one. And then the layout, of course, is different on a monohull, big monohull like this. This one's set up for fishing, could be diving, a lot of water sports.
Right.
It lends itself to those sort of activities.
Yeah, and it's got a big cockpit, open cockpit to lend itself towards moving around, especially if you've got rod and reel in hand, or if you've got tanks on.
Yep.
That way you're not bumping into people, and
right.
very accommodating.
It's a nice layout. Now we've got the fourth alternative. We have two sailboat and we got two power. Is the Cat, right back to the Cat design. And we've got just a few pictures of this because we just went over it. The Cat, Power Cat, is really going to be, in terms of layout, virtually identical to the sailboat Cat, right?
Practically identical. The only thing that's missing is a mast.
Right.
But yes, the layout will be very similar.
Mm-hmm.
And the amount of room that you've got on board, lends itself to having a larger group.
Yes, very spacious.
Yeah.
And we can tell that here, again, this picture of the stern, just all sorts of room, whether it's on the upper deck or the lower deck, it's just gobs of room.
And especially with this design, they do have the upper deck, which adds another level of comfort and room.
Place for people to be, yeah. So those are four alternatives. Now, at this point, you say, okay, I want to do a winter getaway. Here are my options. Maybe I'll go to the Caribbean. Maybe I'll do the same boat I'm used to, a monohull, or maybe I'll try a Cat. And then you have to decide, okay, who's going to steer this thing, basically, right? And here's a photo of a young lady at the wheel, and it's really, it seems like three different buckets. There's a bareboat charter, there's a chartered cabin, and there's a captain and crew. And I thought we'd home in basically on the bareboat and the captain and crew. And if this was an example of a bareboat, this young lady steering the boat, or here's a photo of a young man steering a boat, what does bareboat mean? What are the pros and cons of that experience?
A bareboat is basically that you are going to be renting the boat on your own without a professional captain. Mm-hmm. Hopefully you will be bringing somebody qualified as the captain to come along.
Right.
They will check qualifications to make sure that the boat doesn't go off without proper guidance.
Captain having a clue.
But a bareboat is essentially, a family can be a little bit more intimate without somebody they don't know as a captain and crew to help them along. You have to be very, very forthright with your knowledge, and make sure that you know the areas so that you're not going to put anybody in peril on
Don't
board.
try to fool anyone. So it seems like the pros are you're sailing or cruising with intimate friends and family, people you know very well, and you have the flexibility to kind of go wherever you want, when you want it.
Yes.
And the primary drawback seems to be that you don't have that professional captain's oversight and maybe knowledge of the local waters and familiarity with that boat.
Yes, that is big. So you have to make sure that you're going to be enjoying yourself on this cruise as well as working the cruise. So that's where you might want to weigh and consider a professional captain to take that burden off your shoulders.
Right. We're going to talk about that a little more in a second. Here's a picture of what a bunch of people. They could be crew, right? They could be crew in the bareboat, and they could be crew in the captain. But they're an important component of the whole equation, and we're going to talk more about them towards the end of the show. But I want people to maybe make a mental check mark. The crew is something to really consider here.
Yeah, especially with a bareboat situation, you're going to be expecting your crew to lend a hand.
Yes.
So they need to have some type of base knowledge of sailing, and be able to take direction from the captain to make sure that everything works properly.
Right. Now here's a picture of you at the helm, and you're a professional captain.
That is
so
correct.
This is representative of a charter that where they paid for a professional captain and probably crew. Again, what do you see as the pros and cons of that approach for people?
There again, it's going to take a lot of responsibility off the person who's chartering the boat, so that they can sit back and actually enjoy their time on board. Doesn't mean they can't take the helm.
Right.
Oftentimes a captain it'll be a teaching situation that they can still take the helm.
Yes.
But once again, the captain with a professional crew, they will be charting the course.
Right.
They know the local waters to keep you out of trouble, the good anchorage spots, the good little nooks and crannies that you can go explore
Getaways,
that the bigger boats can't get to.
the other guys aren't aware of. So
Yeah.
so you pay a little bit more money, but you get you shift the responsibility from yourself to the captain.
That is correct. Yeah.
That's nice.
And that's worth its weight in gold
I
sometimes.
imagine it is. Well, so as you think through, as someone thinks through this, which one would be the better option for me? They've got to figure out, well, how do I make arrangements for the boat? And we've got some photos here, just representative boats. They could come from any fleet. But if we start off with the largest operations, like the moorings or a big global company, from your perspective, what do you see as the pros and cons of that particular operation? And we'll compare it with some of the other operations.
Yeah. Well, the bigger operations, they're going to be globally, so you have a bigger variety of destinations that you can choose from. They will also have usually update their fleet a little bit quicker and more often, so that the boats tend to be a little bit newer.
Yep.
Doesn't mean that you can't go with another group with a little bit older fleet and still have a great maintained boat.
Yep.
You know, there's nothing wrong with that either. Some of the real pros is that, you know, they'll have knowledge of a whole bunch of different navigational waters.
Yes.
They will have access and information for provisioning boats. And once again, it'll be a little bit step easier in getting that charter.
Right. So the large operation has some benefits. Something slightly smaller would have some of the same benefits, right?
Yes.
Maybe a little less scope in terms of the destinations they cover, or the size of the fleet, or something like that. How about when you move the next step, or the third tier down, into a broker that represents maybe 3 or 4 individual owners? What do you see as the pluses and minuses there?
Well, with that, the brokers are always going to do their due diligence and visit the boats. They're going to make sure that the boat is adequate for what they're representing as a broker. They're not going to set you up with something that's going to make them look bad. So
Right.
everybody's reputable. Everybody does their homework.
Right.
But you, as a charter person, need to do your homework and check out their reputations. Check out what people are saying about them, the reviews.
And they're going to have a little less selection probably. And then if this is the last representative boat, if you're dealing directly with an individual owner, it sounds like some of the points you just made about needing to do your homework
Yeah.
would apply.
Yeah, if you're dealing with an individual, chances are that individual is going to have great pride in that 1 or 2 boats in their fleet, so they'll be very well maintained,
Yeah.
but not as well known.
Right.
Doesn't mean that they're bad. Once again, do your homework,
Do your homework.
check them out,
Right.
and check out reviews.
Yep. Okay. Now we've got a couple pictures here just to join us as we talk about costs. We're talking about a Caribbean getaway here.
Yep.
What sort of costs are we typically looking at for a week or two in St. Thomas or St. Croix or something?
Okay, well, once again, prices will vary based on whether it's going to be a motor, power boat, or whether it's going to be a sail. Power will
Yes.
be a little bit more expensive,
Okay.
just because fuel costs.
Yes.
Another key factor that you really need to consider in chartering would be how new the boat is.
How new it is. Okay.
Yeah,
Yep.
so that's always a key.
Right. All right. So we're looking at any ballpark figures here?
Yeah, if you're bareboating, you can probably get away with, 4,000 or 5,000 for the week. That's without provisions.
Right.
So if you're going to try to provision the boat, you can probably close to double that.
Okay.
But there again, it'll depend on the size of your boat.
Right.
But when you
Right.
provision it, it takes a big worry away from you. You'll know it's provisioned properly.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
And they won't lead you wrong. They're not going to make you go
Right.
hungry.
Right. Of course. Okay. Well, we're running close to the end of the show here, unfortunately, but I want to share just a couple tips with people. We've got just
Sure.
maybe 2-3 minutes to do that in. This photo we have up here talks to the issue of compatibility. Is that a big theme in terms of having a good situation or a good vacation?
Absolutely. You know, if you're going to be spending a week with a group of people in tight quarters, you want to make sure that everybody is compatible and gets along, because that can be a long week if you don't.
It can be a very long week.
But if you're bringing the people that you do know,
Yeah.
chances are the compatibility will be there.
Yeah, so you might want to check that out before you go, but that's a key thing.
Yep.
This next photo here, this is of a fellow at the wheel.
Yeah.
And so skipper's competence, if they're going to go bareboat, is really an important element, right? As well as the crew competence.
Yes, yes. Well, you know, the skipper's got to be able to, you know, study ahead, know the waters, be able to navigate, be able to plan out a course, be able to kind of lead the charge.
Of course,
you know, so
yeah.
people have to be able to take direction from the captain.
Right.
And they need to know some terminology as well.
Yep. So you really want to get your skipper competence, crew competence cards
Yeah.
in a row before you go off.
And I would suggest meeting a few times before you go to go over things, just to make sure everybody's on the same page. Don't just wait till you get to your destination and say, "Oh, this is what's going on." You know, that's
a good point.
That could be some conflict.
That could be some conflict. We have here a photo of you with a young child. Kids add another element and really should be accommodated in your thinking to ensure, again, a great vacation, right?
It can be a wonderful experience for the children.
Yes.
And the parents as well. But
Yeah.
once again, you need to plan. Don't overschedule with itineraries your week, because if you do, you're going to just be disappointed that you didn't fulfill all those obligations.
Right. Don't overbook. Leave
Yeah.
enough time for the
Yeah.
kids to have some fun. And
Because things will be a lot slower with kids. You know, you just
Yes.
can't get up and go as soon, because there's a lot more preparation work. And you want to make sure that the kids are going to be
gonna have a good time.
going to have a great time. Yeah.
Right. And you were just talking about planning, and to me, this photo represents the result of good planning, right? We have a lot of serenity in whether you planned out your rations, your provisioning, or your payments, or this sort of thing. A little forethought goes a long ways in this sort of thing, right?
Yes, and that's exactly what you want. You want the mind to be at ease. You want it to come back relaxed and not come back even more tense than when you left.
You don't want to be all stressed out.
No.
So planning will help. Well, you know, it's hard to believe, but we've zipped through a lot of material here today on chartering, which hopefully it will be helpful to people. Talking about how to pick a different location, the trade-offs between the different locations,
Yep.
the different boats, the different ways to staff them, and some tips that you've learned over the years. I think we've got a pretty good overview there done. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up the show?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me here. I sincerely appreciate being here. And in choosing a boat, make sure that you are well prepared. There are many options out there. Do your research, find out what suits you best, and don't be afraid to take a chance on a destination you haven't been to.
Okay.
To have a little bit of fun.
Try something new.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid, but be well prepared.
All right,
Be
good
well
idea.
prepared.
Good idea. Well, thank you for joining me today. And thank you, Smart Boating viewers, for watching us. If you have questions or comments or input, you can visit us at our website, www.smartboatingus.com. Thank you.